I'm Szczepan Orlowski. We are based in London. I'm from Animorph. We are a cooperative that develops augmented and virtual reality applications. And so it happens that we also have worked on several human rights projects, but we primarily just try to help people with the work we do. So also we work in the medical sector, developing sensory prosthetics and AR to cure people or like help with rehabilitation of like stroke patients, for instance. So I would try to avoid, let's say, the topics that you are very well aware of and focus on things that we do and just put them in this context. Cool, so I suppose you already have an answer to this question after those conversations, because we are definitely facing something that Adam Curtis described as hypernormalization, or actually this is a term from the Glasnost period. In fact, Glasnost and perestroika, which is that we don't know what to believe anymore. And this creates a noise that in turn generates confusion, so people don't know what to follow. And this is why we use our approach in augmented and virtual reality to engage people again by just striking them with very visceral content that hits them to the bottom. But the whole point of it is not just to hit with new technology, but actually to speak to people. And because there are so many perspectives on things and people see, different fragments of pictures, we cannot really address them in the same way. So what do we do if we live in a post-truth world where even truth can be sold as a lie and someone is making money on it? Of course, people lose their trust. And just technology on its own is not going to solve it. And even the most advanced AI for the 5 years ahead, at least, it's not going to solve it. So how do we do it? However high-tech we seem to be, we bet on something quite simple. Which is not the black, but rather tea, coffee, and cake. So this is what I would like to focus on first, before going into technology, which is the participatory design methodology that we follow when we develop projects. So we go to communities and try to understand them, to work with them. So participatory design is a framework that was developed over 50 years ago now, I suppose, in Scandinavia, in car factories where workers realized that the parts that they were assembling were not working very well together. And eventually they managed to establish themselves as people who also take part in the design. And since then, this approach permeates also software design. So of course it's participatory, so everyone has ownership of what is being developed. Then everyone knows what's the problem. What's the problem in the community that everyone wants to solve? So it's not something that we bring to the people and tell people what to do. We don't speak at people. We try to listen to them. And then because people know what's the problem, then they also creative about coming up with solutions. And then we try to frame it together in a way that can advance the overall cause. And this happens very quickly in an iterative manner. So as software developers, we build one version, we test it, we build another one, we test it, and so on and so forth until we need to let it go, and then it lives its own life. So now to the tech, maybe just to settle the ground, because maybe I didn't do it well at the beginning at least. There are 3 different types of technologies that we work with. So virtual reality is when you are in a simulation, you're completely separated from reality. You live in the virtual world, so to speak. And this is usually done in a headset. Well, augmented reality is when you have digital entities that overlap physical space. And this can be done on the phone, but this can be also done in a headset, in holographic glasses. And then mixed reality is something that combines the both. And then you can switch between AR and VR as if, the reality is the wonderland, or maybe the wonderland is the reality. So I'll just speak about those few projects that we worked with that I think can resonate with you. So first is May, the project that we've developed with documentary filmmakers from Hong Kong about workers in Chinese factories. The second one is Aurora. We built, it's kind of like an experience and an installation that was at South Bank Centre in London, which is science tech venue in central London. And this has to do not only with Northern Lights, but also the Sami tribe, people of north of Europe, the only indigenous tribe that is still around in Europe. Virtual Inclusion, that's the project that we developed with Open University and Institute for Strategic Dialogue in Google for school kids to promote social inclusion. And the last one is a project that we're working on now, which uses augmented reality to bring two sides of the peace lines in Belfast, which is probably the most difficult project we've worked on. So, mate, I don't know why things are shifted in a strange way. I think you got some side panel going on there, but on some screens it's okay. I guess I'll try to narrate anyway. So Mate is an app for mobile phones that you can put on a headset, and you accompany a worker in a factory throughout their day in life. So we've at the very beginning, because of the long research that the documentary filmmakers have done into the topic and meeting people, spending time with them, we realized that we don't want to communicate through guilt. We want to engage people in understanding the longing, needs, dreams of those workers, and through this build a connection between people who make the product and people who buy the product. And of course, we were aware as how difficult and how complex the supply chain is. So we embarked on a journey where the character, in this case Xiao, takes us around Shenzhen, and for instance we helped her buy groceries, and she talks about what she likes to eat and stuff. This is the user journey for this one story, and there are several. So each of your choice generates a different scenario, and you end up in a different pocket of a story. So it's a lot of, let's say, development, but everything is organically developed with the characters, with the real people in this case. So we always verify that as we develop the journey, and then someone, in this case those documentary filmmakers, two girls from Hong Kong, shoot it in China. So we go and visit the family, and we realize how complex this situation is, how the women, girls, even if they're more talented than boys, that they cannot educate themselves. They have to go to a big city, work, send money home, while stupid brother is having best time. And then we arrive to a place where, well, we try to build a connection. So after experiencing this app, which I also have with me in a headset if anyone wants to try, many people are very moved, but there's a problem of a clear ask to take action and be able to do something. And there are several NGOs that are involved in this project, and one of them focuses on the supply chains. And even though they specialize in this, they themselves cannot confirm that we can cover all the parts of the supply chain, particularly when between the excavation of minerals and factory in China. So this is the place where this project is, and is still developing. The other project is Aurora, where we used the awe of new technology, in this case AR, to encourage people to think about the topic that is underlying this. So Aurora, Northern Lights, have been very deeply engraved in the culture of Sami people who have been in the north of Europe for like around 1,000 years, and their culture is very rich. However, they've also been consistently suppressed over centuries by mostly Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. So this is how it looks basically from a headset. You look over the River Thames and you generate auroras. You look around, but you hear the poetry and stories from some people that were created by them for this performance. And as we researched the topic, we realized how rich is their culture, and also how proud they are of who they are. So, for instance, when one of the Sami people, because he helped Russian Tsar with managing their herds. He was invited to live in a palace, and on Tsar's court, but obviously this was of no interest to him. So people experience just an AR experience that then they would talk about, and they would generate content and social media entries based on that. But we would use this, in fact, to speak about a very ongoing struggle that was happening in the Jætten Valley in north of Norway, where actually one of the poets who effectively helped us, he was striking and opposing this law that Norwegian government introduced to benefit cabin owners who fish in the traditionally occupied, let's say, Sami area, where they for thousands of years fished in a sustainable manner. So they announced a moratorium. This story is very much ongoing. The people are still protesting there. So I use the ATNU. If you want to read about it, please go ahead. Virtual Inclusion is the project that we recently published, and this is a multi-platform experience. So this is you can download it from app stores on Android and iOS, but also you can do it. You can experience it in a browser, because it was designed for schools, and in fact it's been earmarked for national curriculum for secondary schools. And we tried to understand how subtle are the mechanisms of social exclusion. So we went to schools, we met kids many times, teachers, parents, even people who are, policymakers, allegedly remote from the problem. And we tried to understand how those things manifest themselves, and then we developed the scenarios with the kids to depict it in the most faithful way. Sorry, this seems quite small, but essentially we developed, this is an infographic report from Institute for Strategic Dialogue about the project. We developed 3 scenarios that enable you to take action in critical moments in a story. So for instance, when a child is sort of pushed to the wall, and it's bullied, to put it bluntly, you can take action and do something about it. And this has had incredible results. That 84% of children understood what's the problem of exclusion, even though they've never experienced that. Or they realized that they experienced this, and 89% of people said that they would, because of that, they would now know how to react in those situations when this happens, and it happens all the time. So you're no longer just observing things, but actually you are in the middle of it, and you see someone suffering, and then you can do something about it. So in this scenario, for instance, when one of the girls is as I said, pushed against the wall, you can help her, and then you see the outcome of your action. So if you've been passive, you see what happens. If you try to confront the bullies, you see what happens. So that's the project that we will try to develop further, and also the framework that we use to develop the project will be available open source. So potentially people who want to develop their own projects with 360 video interactive scenarios will be able to do that. So next project is Project Wallless, which is a project commissioned by both a city council and executive authority because of the known problem. It's been just 50 years since the introduction of the peace lines in Belfast, in Northern Ireland in general, and the executive authority pledged to remove peace lines by 2023. So here we are, and we're trying to understand how those long-term divisions can be overcome. So it's by no means an issue of software, but rather understanding all the dimensions of this problem. Fortunately, we are not alone in this, and there's a lot of grassroots organizations that have been operating for decades, and they help us. And we're trying to understand how we can bring people together. And in this case, we're not developing something for people. We are developing something with people. And I guess someone who mentioned the sort of business incentive is something that is very much on the agenda after initial workshops, even though it's very dynamic, the situation. We're going there soon again in a couple of weeks. Because it's about imagining shared futures, about finding something that will bring those people together in a constructive manner where they can experience one another and stop being afraid of each other. So not just taking walls apart, or definitely not physical walls, but walls inside of people's minds. And then trying to get very practical outcomes for those communities to work together. So essentially, we're trying to interface a shared vision based on so many perspectives that we originally looked at when there was this picture of an elephant. So summarizing the key points, I guess, are about essentially listening and trying to understand what people are going through, and then this will result in, from our experience, at least from the beginning of our journey, is this will result in better product that has more value to the local community, but also they will be more involved and they will organically amplify this and communicate this to their friends, and then they'll communicate it further. So in fact, you don't need to broadcast as much. And of course, as you develop it, then you try to find ways what will be a better way to express it, a different way to express it, not necessarily a wearable way. Like in Belfast, we're going to do an AR app that people can leave marks on, like sort of secret messages on different objects that people from the other side of the wall will be able to recognize just by looking at the chair or a glass. You know, so we're just building a very basic platform for communication, which is just playful. But essentially, we've been looking for this with the people, and some of them hinted at it. So it wasn't that we had lots of ideas at the beginning and then realized they're detached from what's actually happening. So the immersion here is maybe understood more as a consistency of logic and engagement with the community, not necessarily high-tech VR experience. So here probably that's the point on strategy. So kind of understanding what people want in long term, what is their dream, and then trying to take a tactical point of view. So what we can achieve now, what we can achieve immediately, and what will be available to us then. So try not to jump to the long term discussion straight away. And here data comes very handy. So we've been doing this only for a couple of projects where we actually measure how the users behave, and that's still quite general, I would say, in terms of what are the choices, let's say, of the kids in the virtual inclusion app. Will they support the person who suffers, or will they join the perpetrators? But all this data is very trustworthy, because in VR people are not monitored, so people really behave in a very free way. And this is maybe ironic, they are, but they're in a way that we don't capitalize it, we don't sell it. So also the question of the experience, which is very visceral, it just simply unlocks sort of very free behavior so far, at least. It might change in a few years. So one thing is doing it in the app, the other thing is, of course, building it, and the other thing is trying to learn what can be improved in the next iteration. So with the new technologies, we can definitely move ahead and do it with courage, but also with caution, because if we look at how social media is used now and what are the effects, of course, with virtual reality, with eye tracking, with advanced machine learning and deep fakes, this might go wrong. So I would then encourage everyone from this sector to also leverage, even though you say that there's a crisis of authority, there is also a power in the angle that you're looking from. And I think that it's something that has to be maintained and also simply earned in a new computing platform, because this is effectively what we are talking about. This is where computing is moving. So thank you, and yeah, I have apps headsets with me, so if you want to try it tonight or tomorrow at any point, I've got 2 of those apps on me. Plus, of course, you can download them online. So thank you.